Chapter 4. Name Capricorn Anderson. What are you looking at, jerkface? What are you looking at, butt wipe? The first boy swung his book bag around and slammed it onto the side of the other's head. He responded by punching the first boy in the nose, and soon the two were rolling on the grass, grunting and raining blows on one another. I was horrified. I had read about physical violence, but this was the first time I'd witnessed it in real life. It was sudden and lightning fast, wild, vicious, ugly. In seconds, a ring of spectators formed around the brawlers. Their gleeful chant echoed all around the schoolyard. Fight! 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 Break it up! A teacher burst into the circle, a brawny man with a whistle around his neck. He squeezed himself between the combatants and pushed them apart. All right, who started it? He did, the two chorused, each pointing at his opponent. The teacher gazed around at the spectators. Any witnesses? Nobody said a word. Come on, who saw what happened? I did, I volunteered. Well, Buttwipe wanted to know what Jerkface was looking at, and Jerkface wanted to know what Buttwipe was looking at. I turned earnest eyes on the bloody and dirt-smeared brawlers. You were barely 3 inches apart. Couldn't you see you were both looking at each other? The teacher reddened. Who do you think you are, Jerry Seinfeld? You must have me confused with another student, I told him. My name is Capricorn Anderson. Are you talking back to me? I hesitated. The whistle teacher had asked me a question, and I had answered by talking. Yes? I ventured uncertainly. By the time he was finished yelling, both fighters had boarded their buses and gone home. I was the one who got sent to Mr. Kaziggy's office. I was sitting on the bench when Mrs. Donnelly appeared. I leaped up. Is Rain going to be okay? That's why I'm here. Let's take a ride over there and find out. Her brow furrowed. What are you doing in the hot seat? I have a smart mouth, I replied honestly. It's against the rules. She began leading me down the hall. Come on, we've got a long drive. I'll straighten everything out with Mr. Kaziggy. It took more than an hour to get to the hospital, but it was worth it. Good news, Rain's operation was a success. So we can go back home? I asked anxiously. Rain smiled sadly. The doctor was right. This is going to be a long recovery, and because it's only the two of us at Garland, they're not going to release me early. She held my hand. I know you're upset, but we're just going to have to be strong. I don't like it out there, I complained. It's too crowded. People dress funny, they talk too fast, and all they're interested is in things. Cell phones and iPods and Game Boys and Starbucks. What's a Starbuck? She looked upset and older than I'd seen her before. I want you to listen to me, Cap, and try not to blame me. Blame you? I believe in the community, she began, and I believe in the life we've built together. But I was fooling myself to think that you were still so young that you wouldn't have to learn about the world outside ours. It's not a nice place, and I didn't want you to be tossed into it without a little more preparation. I'd read about depression, but this was the first time I'd actually felt it. It was like a stone pressing down on my chest. I couldn't lift it off because I didn't have the strength. I'm kind of scared, Rain. Well, don't be, she said firmly. All you have to do is focus on who you are and what your values mean to you. You've passed every state test, always in the top 5%. You're as smart and capable as anybody, more than most. What I saw in school today wasn't on any test, I observed grimly. She gave me a sympathetic smile. True, information isn't the same as experience. You know what television is, but you've never watched it. You know what pizza is, but you've never tasted any. You know about friendships, but you've never had a friend. You're my friend? Of course I am, she agreed, but I'm not exactly a teenager. I'm already finished with other teenagers. I've been in real school for 1 day, and that's plenty. People are constantly screaming at each other. 2 boys actually resorted to physical violence. I thought violence only happened in crimes and wars, but this was over. I shrugged helplessly. I can't even explain it. You have to feel sorry for them, Rain said with a sigh. Non-violence isn't something everyone understands. They've got these things called lockers, I raved on. The halls are lined with them, and you won't believe what they're for. They're for locking stuff away so other people won't steal it. Why can't everybody just share? Rain must have agreed with me because she looked really worried. I poured it on thick. They don't have regular time at school, you know, they have periods. All of a sudden, an alarm goes off, and you're supposed to drop what you're doing and rush off to a different room with a different teacher to do something completely different. How can anybody learn like that? There was a knock at the door, and Mrs. Donnelly poked her head into the room. She lived at Garland for a while when she was a kid, so she understood how great it was and how much I wanted to get back there. Hello, Rain. How are you feeling? It's been a long time, Flora Mundi. Rain looked her up and down. It's wonderful to see that you've done well since your family abandoned the lifestyle and value system they believed in. They talked about her parents and a few other people. Some of the names were familiar, but I didn't remember anybody. The days of Garland as a thriving commune were long before I was born in 1994. It was a friendly conversation, but every time Rain called her Flora Mundi, Mrs. Donnelly got kind of tense. Maybe that was because her family left Garland, so she couldn't live there anymore. I knew how she felt. Anyway, we were soon on our way home. Her home, not mine, unfortunately. Her house was pretty nice, except it had too many stairs. There didn't seem to be any more purpose for them than there had been for the fight at school earlier in the day. The living room was a few steps down, the bedrooms were a few steps up, and the kitchen was in the middle. Mrs. Donnelly called it a split level. But what was the point of splitting a house when you could just make it flat and not have stairs at all? Everything was more complicated in the world outside the community. The buildings at Garland were made of wood, period. Here there was wood in some places, but also brick, stone, and aluminum. Inside there was carpet and tile, white walls and other colors, and hundreds of pictures, curtains, tassels, clocks, figurines, and a million different things that might have been useful, but might have just been for decoration too. Who could tell? It seemed like an awful lot of stuff for just one house. Mrs. Donnelly lived here with her daughter, Sophie, and of course me now. Sophie was 16. She went to the high school. I didn't much like it that I had to be there. Multiply that by 50, and that's how much Sophie didn't like it that I had to be there. Mother, are you on drugs? How could you bring that freakazoid into our house? Shh, Sophie, he'll hear you. I want him to hear me, Sophie shrieked. How else is he going to get the message to clear out? He has nowhere else to go, Mrs. Donnelly pleaded. And that's my problem? Just because he comes from the same hippy-dippy flea circus where you grew up doesn't mean we have to adopt him. Lower your voice, her mother ordered sternly. It's only for 6 weeks, 2 months at the outside. 2 months? I have to live my life. Do you know how long it took me to get Josh Wintrob to ask me out? What's he going to think when he drives up and sees this tie-dye streak of misery draped across the porch? This whole conversation went on before either of us had spoken a single word to each other. I didn't actually talk to Sophie until later that night when I accidentally blundered into her room. She was in her pajamas speaking on the phone while smearing pale green cream all over her face. She threw down the headset. You. Out now. I stood frozen staring at her. What's on your face? Oh, right. You've never heard of moisturizer. You were just looking for an excuse to come busting into my room. I was mystified. What are you moisturizing? She stamped a slippered foot. My skin, genius. It's a beauty product, okay? Scram. I backed out into the hallway. She slammed the door with such force, I'm amazed the wall didn't crumble. The one at Garland probably would have. There I stood, still facing her door, paralyzed with discovery. Beauty. That was precisely the word that had been haunting me. Sophie Donnelly was beautiful. I had seen beautiful girls on book jackets and even noticed them from a distance when Rain and I had gone into town for supplies, but this was the first time I'd ever really met one. I never could have imagined how strong the effect would be. Just standing near her, even when she was yelling at me, made me feel nice. It sure was a strange and complex world outside Garland.